Welcome to the Biopharma Business Intelligence Unit, where symbolic integrity meets strategic clarity. At BBIU, we go beyond the headlines to decode the structural forces behind global biopharma, AI, and economic realignment. If you value precision, verification, and symbolic depth, this channel is for you. Subscribe now to access our weekly briefings, dossiers, and intelligence reports, and consider joining our institutional tier to unlock early warning systems, custom metrics, and exclusive strategic insight. You're not just listening, you're entering the future of epistemic intelligence. www.biopharmabusinessintelligenceunit.com.
Inhaled heparin, an old anticoagulant, emerging as a new weapon against severe respiratory infections. Evidence summary. In late September 2025, the global conversation around COVID-19 shifted with the publication of a multinational meta-trial on inhaled unfractionated heparin. Coordinated from Melbourne and reported in eClinicalMedicine, the trial aggregated over 500 hospitalized patients across 6 countries. The findings, highlighted by ScienceDaily, were striking. Patients treated with nebulized heparin had nearly half the risk of progressing to mechanical ventilation or dying compared to those on standard care. This was not a marginal statistical fluctuation. It was a structural signal, one that forces clinicians, regulators, and policymakers to reconsider the therapeutic arsenal against COVID-19. Why did this result matter so much? Because it emerged in a landscape of partial solutions. Antivirals like remdesivir and nirmatrelvir's ritonavir reduce viral replication, but only if given early and often with limited effect in severe cases. Corticosteroids, such as dexamethasone, can blunt inflammation, but do so by suppressing immune defenses, risking secondary infections. Immunomodulators like tocilizumab offer targeted relief for cytokine storms, but are expensive and not universally accessible. Systemic anticoagulation reduces thrombotic complications, but at the cost of bleeding risk, particularly in fragile patients. And supportive care, oxygen, high-flow devices, non-invasive ventilation, and intubation remains the final recourse, resource-intensive and unequally distributed across the globe. Against this fragmented therapeutic background, inhaled heparin appears different. It is not a new molecule. It is a century-old drug, inexpensive, stockpiled, and familiar to clinicians everywhere. Its innovation lies in its delivery. Nebulization concentrates the drug where the pathology resides, the lungs, while minimizing systemic exposure. The molecule's pleiotropy is its strength. It prevents microthrombosis, tempers inflammation, protects the endothelial barrier, and may even act as a viral decoy by binding SARS-CoV-2 spike proteins. Unlike antivirals that address replication alone, or steroids that mute immunity broadly, inhaled heparin speaks the multiple languages of COVID pathophysiology simultaneously. Historical evidence reinforces this plausibility. Dixon's 2020 review had already shown that inhaled heparin improved oxygenation and reduced markers of lung injury in ARDS. Glass and colleagues demonstrated its safety in mechanically ventilated patients nearly a decade earlier. Lee's meta-analysis suggested that LMWH could improve survival in acute lung injury, even without inhalation. These strands of data, once peripheral, now converge under the lens of COVID. The broader narrative is just as compelling. 5 years into the pandemic, COVID has not vanished. It has evolved into a slower endemic burn, dominated today by Omicron-descendant NB.18.1. Vaccines and antivirals still matter, but health systems remain vulnerable to seasonal surges and the constant churn of sublineages. In this context, a low-cost, multi-pathway therapy that reduces intubation and death carries weight far beyond statistical endpoints. It becomes a tool of medical sovereignty, especially for low- and middle-income countries, unable to compete for monoclonal antibodies or advanced ICU technology. The story of inhaled heparin is therefore not just about efficacy. It is about architecture. The possibility that global pandemic response could pivot away from exclusivity-driven biologics toward intelligent repurposing of generics. The trial's results are an opening chapter, not a conclusion. Phase 3 studies are urgently needed, safety data must be expanded, and regulators must prepare adaptive frameworks. But the symbolic shift has already begun, a reminder that sometimes the most disruptive therapies are not the newest, but the most cleverly redeployed. BBIU opinion, inhaled heparin and the reframing of pandemic therapy. The Melbourne-led trial on inhaled unfractionated heparin in COVID-19 patients forces us to reconsider the architecture of pandemic response. For decades, crisis medicine has been dominated by a high-cost, high-technology pipeline: monoclonal antibodies, proprietary antivirals, and complex ICU interventions. What this study shows is that a generic, century-old anticoagulant, delivered through a simple nebulizer, can reduce mortality and intubation by nearly half. The implications are structural. Heparin represents a polyfunctional molecule: anticoagulant, anti-inflammatory, antiviral decoy, and endothelial protector. By targeting multiple pathological cascades at once, it bypasses the fragmentation of modern drug development, where each molecule is engineered for a single pathway and marketed at monopolistic prices. Inhaled heparin reopens the question of whether global health can be rebuilt on repurposed generics with clever delivery systems, instead of chasing exclusivity-driven innovation. Strategically, this also reframes preparedness. A therapy that is cheap, stockpiled worldwide, and easily reformulated into an inhalable solution can be deployed in low-resource settings far faster than bespoke biologics. It undermines the symbolic and financial dominance of Big Pharma's pandemic model and restores sovereignty of treatment to health systems otherwise trapped in asymmetric dependency. In short, inhaled heparin is not just a medical intervention. It is a symbolic countermeasure: old knowledge reactivated against both viral pathology and the economic structures that monopolize cures. You've reached the end of the open section of this BBIU content. The complete analysis, with full data, structural frameworks, and extended annexes, is available exclusively to our subscribers. At BBIU, we believe the real value lies beyond headlines, in the depth of structural intelligence that helps leaders and organizations see further. If you want access to the complete archive and future reports, join us at BBIU and take part in the next level of analysis.